Well, it's here. Let's get into it. Thanks for the lovely cooler box, SRAM. That's really cool. But what we're interested in is this. This is then the new SRAM Red Groupset, the world's worst kept secret as always. And we're lucky enough to have our hands on it just before embargo date, so we actually get a chance to see it and give you guys a really detailed review on what is going to be the Groupset that probably sets the standard for almost the next decade. And I really do mean that. The last time this was released was 2019. This is a 5-year product cycle on this. And the trickle-down technology, not just in SRAM, but also Shimano and Campagnolo, normally comes from what is established here at the SRAM Red Groupset. You can often describe SRAM Red as the innovation, the Shimano Dura-Race is probably the more value orientated, and then the high quality, no expense spared from Campagnolo. But the innovation tends to happen here. So let's get into it. So I feel like we should probably start with some boring bits first, tick off some easy bits. This is the new SRAM Red cassette. This is the 10 through to 30, and it is 12 speed, which I'm so happy about that we seem to have maxed out at 12 speed. I think we've got enough gears here. Those cogs are so close together that I think we are hitting our magic era of gear ratios, so to speak. It's not much to talk about here. It looks very, very similar to the old SRAM Red XDR only. But yeah, to be fair, I'm interested to see the press release on this, but this looks very, very familiar, and I'm sure it's going to be compatible. I can't see any reason why it wouldn't be. Next up, keeping with the 12-speed theme, I don't think there's going to be too much difference with the crankset either. This is the power meter version on here, and we have the 48-35 chainring sizes here on the Quark power meter. It does look like they've refined the details here on the Quark power meter. Remove cap before installation. Let's just peel that off, and let's see if we can get a nice satisfying peel and show you what this thing actually looks like. There really isn't much to report on this. The actual design looks very, very familiar. It looks like they've refined this whole area here, the plastic shrouding around the power meter, and we're still sticking with the 8 chainring bolts on the back as well. There is nothing that's really catching my eye as unusual on that at all, but the design itself has become a little bit more subtle, a little bit more refined. I guess the design accents, if you like, on the chain rings as opposed to necessarily on the crank. That is the relatively good looking but relatively boring bits done. Let's get into the meat of this group set. So if the rumours are right, the contents of this box is what this group set is all about. Oh, interesting. We have, wasn't expecting that, Hammerhead Karoo. Now, I don't know if this is just media samples or what, but they have actually made an entire compartment for this. That's interesting. That definitely suggests some compatibility with head units, which has always been a bit of a bugbear. We have a a USB-A to micro USB. How the hell is there still micro USB in here? The charger, yeah, it's still micro USB. Come on, guys. This is the era of USB-C. A couple of new batteries. They look exactly the same as well. And we have the rear mech. Now, first thing I notice is this rear jockey wheel has a similar design to the T-Type from the mountain bike range, but it doesn't look like it's the clutch mechanism that we've seen on the T-Type. It's a nice, lovely sort of matte silver look. It says Max 36 tooth. Now that in itself is relatively interesting. I do quite like it. I'll open this up. It's got the carbon cage as we expect from SRAM Red. It's a very nice, clean aesthetic. I'm really, really glad they stuck with the silver. I always think that a premium group set should just shout, should hang off your bike like jewellery. Here is the front mech. Scan here to set me up, and it looks like they've covered up the main bit here with some masking tape, so I guess this is a fairly paint sensitive area. So in contrast, the front mech is actually a glossy and matte black combination with only the subtle hints of the silver. Still very smart looking, but I don't see any massive changes. A couple of little setup widgets, that all looks very, very familiar. We have brake rotors. That is definitely a new design of brake rotor. Stepping away from their aero design into something a little bit different. This is the Paceline rotor, 160 millimeters. Minimum thickness is 1.55, so that's all very, very familiar territory as well. So no massive changes. Also with this layer, we have various setup bits. You'll all recognize that bit of red plastic. We have a front mech setup for one type. We also have a green setup ring for larger 52, 56 chain rings, just to help you get that front mech absolutely in the right position. Mounting hardware and all of our brake fittings as well. All of that looks familiar. This looks like some kind of brake measuring. So on here we've got written minimum 1.7, minimum 155. So I'm wondering if that is some kind of brake pad splitter, but also minimum thickness for the rotor as well. So I'm going to go and read the instructions and get back to you on that. Hey, here we are at last. These are the levers. This is what I think is going to be the biggest change of this group set. Okay, the first thing that really strikes me with these is this beautiful bright silver rear caliper, and the pads are really far recessed as well, so they're built up in this area here. Pads are exactly the same pads, there's no change, thank God for that. There is still exactly the same SRAM AXS pads that we're familiar with. Bleed port looks like it's the SRAM bleeding edge, yeah, so no more special tools by the looks of it. It's very, very light in the hand. That really does look very nice. The levers, there's probably one thing that's going to set this apart from what we've seen on the Rumors is going to be this lever, and automatically it looks very space age. We've gone to a much more angular design, edges look very, very futuristic, and the levers are noticeably smaller as well. They look almost the same size as an old Shimano 10-speed mechanical, which is incredible really, how far these hydraulic levers have come. The other thing that really strikes me is the size of the paddle shift here. Now this is always a bit of a bugbear of mine, because if you had small hands and you did the reach adjust, this area was so large that often it would just get in the way of your fingers. So it looks like they've, one, given this a bit more of a flare, but two, also made that profile a little bit slimmer and longer, which I think is going to suit an awful lot more hand sizes. And I can immediately see the access shifter is exactly the same. There's still an LED battery light there. And look at this. There is what looks like a button. Yes, there's a little button here. So hopefully this can either be programmed to control the Karoo maybe, or maybe even shift, or maybe even a dropper post. So that would be interesting. And okay, the next thing that strikes me is that the stealth jig has gone. This is now a direct connection straight into the back of the shifter here, and there is nothing on here warning me as to what oil it takes. There's nothing here saying use dot fluid or mineral oil for that matter, and there's nothing on the caliper either saying what oil it is. I'm actually going to have to read the instructions to check what oil it takes. So we have, okay, there's the button up here. So there's a cable running up to where this little satellite shifter is. There's a contact in point, so the contact in point is shifted from the top down to the side here to adjust the contact, and under here looks like there's a small Allen key in there. That looks like that's going to be the reach adjust, and then the contact point adjust is going to be here. And again, this is the bleed port, but there is nothing up here to say whether it's dot fluid or mineral oil. I can't quite believe it, but I'm actually going to have to go and read the instructions to see what oil it takes. Quick weigh in then, cassette 10 through to 30, 194 grams, very good. Crankset, remember this is the 4835 with a power meter, 172.5 millimeters, 403 for the drive side. The entire crankset comes in at 580. Front mech without battery, because they're standard batteries throughout the range, 145 grams. And the rear mech, probably the lightest part here of the upgrade, 261 grams without a battery, pretty impressive. And the disc rotor coming in at 131 grams. Now, I feel there's definitely lighter weight rotors on the market, so it'd be interesting to hear what SRAM have to say about what the performance advantage is over the extra weight. The front shifter, hose, caliper, mount adapter and brake pads as a combination is 346 grams. Right, let's go and get this fitted to a suitably lightweight bike. Okay, we have a naked look 795 RS blade ready and waiting for its first taste of some SRAM Red magic. Now, I've just been sent the instruction manual and I can confirm that it is DOT 5.1 fluid that we're still using, so no change there despite the optimism initially of looking at the levers and not seeing any. I really hope they change that actually for the final production run, that they actually put some markings on there. That'd be really useful. So process is, let's route these cables through, let's get the shifters set up, and then there's some very specific information about the shifters I'll talk you through, but right now let's do some cable weaving. Interesting. So the stealth majig, which is the bit that stops these leaking, is actually built into this plastic housing. So no longer is there like a little pipe that comes out here that you can get access to. This is now moulded in. Love that. Oh yeah, looks great already. Love hanging a bit of SRAM Red silver jewellery onto a bike like this. So it's always a bit frustrating installing SRAM group sets because they sort of make everything ready for you. But then you've got to take everything apart again before you can construct it, where the Shimano ones, they normally come with like little plastic stops and that sort of thing, so oil's not going everywhere. Another interesting thing here is the grease that you can see around here. It doesn't look like dot grease, and normally SRAM dot grease is bright orange, and this looks like something completely different. I'm not quite sure what it is that they're using in their factory, but it's definitely not what they sell to bike shops. And this actually comes with the 160mm rotor adapter already, so there's no need to include that. Next up, we've got a slightly narrower set of handlebars, because if you've been watching this channel before, you know that I've been whining on about the handlebars that come with the blade being a little bit on the wide side, 42s rather than 40s. So we've got the opportunity of switching these out, and now I know I've been whinging about this being too high as well, but I still don't feel like I want to cut that yet because I'm a wimp, to be honest, but I don't mind changing handlebars out at all. Look at that. That's how easy that was. That is, when you buy a really good quality bike like these from Look, that is what you expect. Like, cables just float through. It is so nice to work on. So now I've got the instructions. There's a few little features on this which I want to point out. First of all, they're going to call this little thing here the bonus button. Isn't that exciting? And also the little, what we know as the SRAM AXS button, has another purpose, and that's what they call enhanced shift. So on the left hand lever it's going to disable the enhanced shift, and on the right hand lever it's going to enable, turn it on, the enhanced shift. I'm not quite sure what enhanced shift does just yet, but we're going to find that out on the road as soon as we get this ready. Cool. Before we go much further, I need to get this on the ground so I can set these levers up exactly how I want them. So that means we've got to change some wheels. Now, the Karimas that came off this, if you remember from other videos that we've done, can't get hold of a XDR free hub in time for this video anyway. So I'm going to go back to my fast forwards, which does have an XDR driver on it already. So quick video montage, and we'll come back to you with a set of compatible wheels. Quick flick through all the SRAM hose shortening bleed procedures. I haven't actually updated this yet for the new stuff, so it just refers back to the original SRAM documentation for now. This all looks pretty straightforward, so I'm going to cut these hoses and I'll get back to you when everything is bled up and we'll talk about all the various adjustments. Quick snap back then. I had to go and fight the guys downstairs for the bleed kit. That all bled up as normal. No surprises there. These little bleed blocks are quite cool. I've never come across these before. These are actually quite funky. It looks like they've got a disc wear groove in there, but they just sort of slide in and you sort of compress them together. Makes for a pretty good bleed block. I've already installed a bottom bracket as well. This is a rotor bottom bracket because before we were running 24mm axles and now we're on 29mm axles, and we do have to do a little bit of spacer in because these are 85.5mm bottom brackets. So already got this lined up. I have to say, like, picking up the SRAM Red stuff is instantly just feels lighter in the hand than the Shimano ones I've just taken out. Front derailleur next, we have two mounting holes here actually. There's two threaded holes, so got quite a lot of scope there for mounting options, which I love. So if you're going to go really, really small ratios, it looks like you can. And we also have the lines to line all of this up. The other thing I notice is that the screw to actually install the wedge is actually on the side that you want to work in. So Before, you would have to get in behind here with a tiny little Allen key and try and screw this on. So now the threads are this side and you can access it from this side. So that is a massive, massive improvement. So inside the box is actually a handy little gadget on here as well. So you can scan the QR code, it'll give you the instructions. I'm actually quite chuffed actually, because with enough experience, you can see all of this absolutely lines up, and the idea is to get these lines. And look at that, I'd say pretty damn good for doing it by eye. All in the chain, instructions do say over the 2 biggest cogs, look where they cross, add 1 link, and we cut the chain there. First ride then, and a couple of little things I did off camera just because I didn't want to get called out about it, mostly because of the chain length. Now, this comes with a 10 to 30, which, having just ridden up this hill, that is not going to stick it for very long around here. So I want to change that to 1034, 1036. So I just wanted to mess around with the chain, a bit of mechanics curiosity really, just seeing how much leeway you have if you wanted to change a cassette with that chain length. So that was off camera, and a couple of little things with bleeding the brake in certain configurations, or reach adjust and contact point adjust, etc. as well. So Goff's got a bit more of a mechanics overview of those sort of systems. Anyway, first impressions, what have I noticed so far? Little feature I just noticed coming down this sort of steep hill here. Now, you know when you come over the top of a hill and you're in like an over enthusiastic gear, something quite big, get the speed up, and you get down to the bottom of that hill and there's a road junction, and all of a sudden you're in the wrong gear and you try to desperately downshift while you still got some momentum so you can pull away. Well, if you ever had Shimano gears and you're trying to, you know, on a steep descent, try and find a front shift and a rear shift, got to say that these SRAM ones, so easy. Even when you're like trying to look at traffic and navigate a bump and a pothole, whatever, your finger just finds that shift lever and it just works. So ergonomic, thumbs up. First up, lever design. Now, I really do think this is a nicer shape. Like the transition from here to here is a lot nicer than Shimano and arguably Campag as well. But the rubber that they've used is still like loose and floppy and baggy in places. It doesn't integrate with the handlebar quite as nicely as Shimano does, and still can't get this irritating bit here to stick down properly. So Shimano is still very much winning in the hood cover designs, but I think SRAM have nailed this shape quite nicely. There are a couple of little design accents that I am appreciating. Sort of the lines that come off the crankset here sort of match up with the rear derailleur jockey wheel, and also with the brake rotors as well to an extent. One concern I have is the black anodizing here on the front mech, mostly because I don't know how long it's take before that all gets scratched up and not starts looking a bit tatty. It'd also be nice if it had a little bit more bling about it. You know, this is a premium group set, you know, and the rear mech is all shiny and nice, and the front mech just seems to blend in. I don't know, maybe that was a design choice, I'm not sure. Here's one little detail that irritates me. Let me know if it irritates you as well. But these little rubber grommets that kind of cover up these bolts, like, why haven't they improved these yet? This is absolutely top of the top premium group set, and they never quite fit properly. They always sort of slide down and come loose, and I just feel like this is absolutely creme de la creme. Details like this could just be better. And it's not just SRAM that do this, it's all of the top brands. Come on, this is relatively simple stuff to get right, and I just wish that whole thing would be nicer. We're down here in Leicester Square in London. We go to the Prince Charles Cinema with this prestigious lodge. I've got a shirt on, everything. Likewise. Kind of looking forward to seeing what I've got to say. Excited. Brought half the world press down to London for it. It's got to be good.
Absolutely. And us as well.
Yeah, and us. back from our trip from London, there's a couple of things that we learnt down there that we haven't mentioned in the video so far, which I do think are important. Now, the reason for this really good braking performance, and it really is that one finger braking, that 80% better, so they say, is that they've changed the piston configuration from going from this vertical position here and a pull configuration to now being completely horizontal and laid out down here, which means that the transfer from your finger is directly into the piston and directly into the hose, which is why we didn't see that stealther jig like we normally see. So that's very clever packaging to try and get all of that to fit, and a lever which actually hasn't got any longer at all. So really clever engineering there. The other really nice little detail I like is to make sure you get the best positioning. They've made sure that all these lines on the hoods are laid out so that when you're positioning the hood onto the handlebar, you've got this line down the center here which you can line up to be completely perpendicular to the handlebar and in line with the drops if yours don't flare, but also the bottom of the lines here can also be completely parallel to the floor. So you've got some really nice little setup guides there just to make sure that you get the levers nice and straight on both sides. Love that little attention to detail. Okay, if you're enjoying the video so far, please think about liking and subscribing and get down there in your comments. That's most of the technical information over. While we were down in London, we did manage to catch up with Robbie McEwen, Nick from Backyard Bikes and Cade Media fame, and me and Simon offer our thoughts on the entire group set, the price, and where this whole generation of group sets is going. So stay tuned for some opinions. Robbie McEwen, everybody, thank you. I think you're the only person in this room that's actually ridden the new SRAM group set. Do you realise that?
I do realise that, because before I came here and I knew I was coming to this event, I said it would be really handy before I came to this event if I've actually ridden it. So that the guys from SRAM, they very stealthily built up a bike. Thanks to Little Trek for sending over one of their.
Oh, is that where you get it from?
Bikes, yeah. It came out of from last year's Tour de France. It was one of the spare bikes that never got ridden. So they provide the frames. I'm on a Trek Madone, built up with the new SRAM Red, and I've ridden it this week. Took me a while to get the bike, with a few logistical issues with delivery, but I've ridden 4 times. I've done about 300k
already, yeah. And you're still commenting on the Tour, on the Giro as well, which is pretty good going.
Yes, I've managed to get out. So I go after hours when we finish for the day commentating on the Giro, get back to where we're staying in Windsor, and then pretty much jump on the bike every second night, sometimes a little bit more, and get out for a pedal. And there's a number of things that sort of struck me immediately. You know, pulling it out of the box in a rush to build it up to meet the bunch, guesstimated the seat height and just jumped on. And right from the get-go, there's a new bike feel, of course, that smooth drivetrain.
It's always an extra 20 watts, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it just feels so good. But even 4 days in yesterday, just riding along it and just getting a feel for everything, it just feels so natural. And it's one of those rare occasions that a new product, in this case a new group set, feels like a significant improvement over the last.
And I asked you in the presentation a slightly weird question: can ergonomics make you faster? Because we're talking about it's lighter, it's 156 grams lighter, but the big thing for me is that ergonomics. And actually I did a YouTube video a little while ago complaining about what they really need to fix is not going to 13 speed, but really, you know, the finger pinch and small hands. That was the thing to fix. And can that extra confidence, when you're on rough roads and in a peloton and in a group and moving around, can that extra grip actually become speed?
And it can, because comfort equals performance. And when you look at the amount of time that, for example, World Tour riders, both men's and women's peloton, the amount of time, the amount of kilometres that they spend on a bike, if you're more comfortable on that bike, that will equal greater performance. And the very first thing that struck me when I rode out and went to meet the bunch was just the feel of the hoods. And my first thought to myself was massive improvement. Yeah. I already thought the last one was quite comfortable, but it's when you just get something that just goes next generation, and it already felt way more comfortable. I was really impressed with the not only the look, the feel, the angles of it, the way it felt to my hand, the first set of lights, the pulling on the brakes, everything felt like, yes, this is better. Yeah. And then beyond that, just as you ride along, you just feel, for extended periods, really, really comfortable.
So here's the other question: what about safety? Have you ever had one of those really sketchy moments in the peloton when you
have I had one? Have I had 1,000? Have I had 10,000?
That could have been better managed by better grip on the handlebars.
Well, there's always stuff where when you're in the peloton and there's one of those moments, it comes down to hundredths of a second of getting the brakes on time, and that's the difference between hitting the rider in front of you or overlapping the wheel and coming off or not, or saving yourself from a situation where you just wipe the sweat from your brow or you're having wounds cleaned out, and that's a massive difference.
So maybe one of the biggest things with ergonomics is actually, can it help prevent some accidents or safety issues?
I think certainly with the differences that we now see in the adjustability of those levers for reach, and not only for the reach, but we've seen with the positioning of the new positioning of the piston, that rather than be a piston that's actuated by pulling down, it's now they've completely changed it really by 90 degrees, and it's now a push-in piston. So you actuate it much more easily with less power for more braking. It's a lot easier to get that. So those moments that I was talking about, those moments come down to 100th of a second. You're there. You've hit enough brake, because where it was before, and I've had this in previous group sets of even other brands. You think you're sort of there and you grab it, but you just can't grab enough of it because of the angle of your hand and where you get to, where that's going to be eliminated with the usability of this new Red group set.
I've got one last sneaky question before this goes on too long, and I appreciate your time, Robbie. So we all signed NDAs before we were allowed into that presentation, but you had a bike that you took to a group ride in Windsor. How did you get away with that?
Well, I did promise that no photos would come out of that bike, and I got to the start of the ride, and then someone pointed over to a guy and said, "Oh, that guy makes YouTube videos of every ride we do." So I went straight over to him. I said, "Don't ride behind me, don't point your camera sideways, and if you happen to get me in any shot, delete." He said, "Do you mind if I film it now and just release it next week?" I said, "You can't do that." I said, "I'll see you next week and you can film it."
Well done, Robbie. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Cheers.
First time we've met in person. Yeah, hey Nick. How you doing? Right? First time we met, not in the YouTube comment section, which is pretty cool. So, thing is, first impressions of this SRAM Red group set. Come on, let's get out there. Well, obviously, there's no lie that I really love SRAM, but it is good. I'm quite sad that it's not one by. Oh, there is. It is going to come, but it's not. Oh, yeah, it's not now though. The Shade says it's not going to be available for a few months. It's like, the end of July, I think it was. And like, yes, that's I just ordered something. It's when it's going to come.
Yeah, that was my first day. Like, this is going to hit the gravel market when it gets down to force.
Yeah.
But it's backwards compatible. So I think straight away I'm going to fit a T-type mech. Interesting. Yeah. And then, so I'm going to use all of it. I'll just take the chain rings off, put a 1x chain ring, and then I'll make it 1x. That's pretty much what we've done. We've just ordered shifters. I'm glad they made the front mech shift faster. Not that I think there's ever been a problem, but all the Shimano fans keep going on about how fast the shifting is. And I think people forget that the rear mechs, I think, on most SRAM shift faster than Shimano, in my opinion. It's the front mech that is. The front mech's always let SRAM down, hasn't it? Always. Ever since, like, Your 22, that's always been a problem, hasn't it? They never quite got it right. And Shimano definitely improved it with current stuff, didn't they? And then, for me, have you felt them in your hand yet? Oh yes, it's just really nice. It's the ergonomics for me is much better. I like it, but the rubber is still loose. Do you know what I mean? Like the new Ultegra, the Dura-Race, the rubber is like shrink wrapped, isn't it? I think it's really, really nice fit. I wonder whether if you looked in the presentation, I haven't messed about with it much, but the way you adjust everything is pulled back further. So I'm not sure if they've done that for more longevity. Yeah, because, well, based with Shimano and Campbell, the rubber is much tighter. We're having a lot of people tearing them or messing about with it, trying to chance. I don't know. I suppose that you'd have to ride it for a bit to really see what... see where...
I don't know,
I've ridden it.
Have you ridden it?
Yeah. Don't tell anyone.
Have you? Did you get into your box?
No. Haven't you?
No, well, officially, I never clipped it like I did in the video. But for the channel, obviously, it got open this morning to film to be ready for when this video goes out. I think it's released. Yeah.
That was my thinking. If they want a good video, they're going to have to...
But I spoke to about 5 shops and almost everybody clipped their locks. So So yeah, I got the code. I still have my lock intact. It'll be on eBay soon. No joke, I'll keep it. I'm going to use it to lock my bike box up, I think. But I'm actually more excited about the box than the actual Groupset. I think I've run out of things to say actually on camera. Yeah, so it's a same video. Yeah, I'm just going to say thank you so much for that. Thanks a lot. And, let's catch up off camera with a proper catch up.
So the morning after the big launch, they rolled out the red carpet quite literally. So to let you guys know, we've been to the Prince Charles Cinema in Leicester Square, rolled out the red carpet, quite literally, big sign above the whole cinema, red carpet treatment,
red branding everywhere,
SRAM branded popcorn. Went to town. So the presentation was a very typical marketing presentation. So I was going to run through a couple of the key bits that we might have missed. 2019, the first. At the last launch, so it's 5 years ago. 2015 is when they first launched eTap and stuff, and they were generation-defining group sets, i.e. it was Campagnolo and Shimano and all the Chinese brands that followed them. So we were expecting another group set that's going to be a generation-defining group set. And what they're trying to do now is refine. This is a matured market, and they're now trying to refine. Pointed out that last year, 2023, they SRAM won all of the Grand Tours. That's all the men's and all the women's Grand Tour races.
I hadn't appreciated that point.
I hadn't either, actually. That was really worth them pointing out. So it's got some pedigree. And they're also recognising and analysing how riders are changing, riding on the hoods more than the drops these days.
Yeah, that was a key takeaway for me. I mean, I've seen it myself as I watch TV and as I ride myself, and you know, we all try and emulate what the pros do a certain grade. So,
yeah, on the hoods with the elbows tucked in.
Making sure your design really factors in the amount of time you're spending on top of the hoods, and being able to effectively change gear from that position, effectively brake, most importantly from that position as well.
And their big strap line for this is effortless performance, effortless perfection.
Yeah.
It's perfection. There's a couple of little things I noticed where I just went, God, they could have just made that a little bit better, but it's pretty close. The big news was it's all backwards compatible. I say no big revolution. That was like, in today's sort of financial climate, the thought of trying to have a whole new standard, it was just going to be, the absolutely point, anything with the AXS branding is going to be compatible, including all the mountain bike stuff.
Which is amazing. And I think the fact that you could just start by, for example, upgrading the levers and get all the ergonomic benefits. That'd be a great investment potentially.
Yeah. So that big headline talking about the levers, 80% less effort to pull the brakes on the hoods.
Which I thought was pretty significant.
That is massive. That is massive. That is.
Just that ability, when you're on the hood, just the one finger, total control.
Yep, one finger, and more importantly, your other three fingers actually gripping the bar rather than just flapping around in space. That is probably the one thing that is going to define the next generation of group sets, because now that's what all the riders are going to be demanding.
Expectations are going to be there. I mean, if you ride this, your expectation is that every bike's going to perform that way.
That's incredible, and that's got to do with this new pivot location. It's like
they're describing the way that they set up the pivot point, and the fact that it's a horizontal bar and the vertical piston.
The caliper is apparently stiffer, which helps braking performance as well, and they're really trying to eliminate, the finger pinch they call it. So that was all.
All that money and time they put into R&D, whether it be pro riders, whether it be just recreational riders, there's a lot of time and research that's gone into looking at that position, and adjustability. I think adjustability was a key thing they were stressing.
Yeah,
to suit all types of riders, all shapes and sizes in terms of hand positions, etc.
Yeah, incredible. And a bonus button.
Oh yes. It's not everybody appreciated the little bonus button. Yeah.
It's been such an obvious missing feature from all SRAM group sets for so long, hasn't it? The fact that it hasn't
frustrated me.
That hasn't got the little buttons on the top, like the GRX and the Shimanos all have. Is to either change gear with or to flip through the menus of your screen. So apparently it will be compatible with ANT Plus computers.
That's what they're saying. You should have at least page through. There's a minimum page through your head device.
That's not available at launch from what we can tell, but that's coming soon, unless you've got the new Hammerhead Karoo, which we'll come on to in a second. So that was all like a catch up, I guess, if you like. They can't have a top end group set that isn't at least on par with Dura-Ace, etc. So that's good.
And I think then the other thing that struck me was the versatility in terms of the cassette range, the chain set range, in terms of the combinations you could choose from, are pretty vast now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Accommodate pretty much most terrains that you're going to ride on.
There are so many options for cranksets. There is now a 5037, a 4835, which is the one that we've been riding, I think will be the most popular, and a 4633, which I think would be popular for some gravel and some more endurance rides. If you are an absolute sadist and you can emulate the pros by buying aftermarket a 52.39, a 54.41, and a 56.43. Yeah. And then, of course, we moved on to the Hammerhead. So they launched the new Hammerhead Karoo. And in actual fact, when you buy the group set now, it's going to come bundled with a Hammerhead Karoo, kind of whether you want it or not, but which is an interesting marketing idea. It looks very nice. It needs to have all the features.
Sat down closely together and really worked together to make sure that they can both take advantage fully of the technology, which you would expect if you've got that kind of time.
Yeah, integration definitely seems to be the thing, and the ecosystem was what they were trying to really push, and how that's all going to work. And then the official weight, 2,496 grams. Is that going to be the code to the box? Claiming 153 grams lighter than the current generation. So, yeah, it's that's always work. 153 grams, not to be sneered at.
I think the biggest savings came on the levers. I think they were found right with 80, 83 savings off the levers.
Yeah, I mean, like the rear mech was 12 grams or something, or 16 grams, wasn't it, and stuff. So 153 grams, that's pretty good.
Nothing to sniff that at.
No. And so the price.
Yeah, interesting, because, I mean, the price point comes out higher than we were kind of thinking, but then it was interesting talking to other dealers there that there was some of the thing, that's the price top end, people pay it, no problem.
It was so interesting meeting lots of other dealers in the pub, because a lot of them were like, well, we sell 4 bikes, our Cannondale, our Trek Madone is going to come with SRAM Red, the price is the price, that didn't really think about it. There's a few shops like us that do custom builds and do upgrades for people who, the price is going to be an important consideration, and we're trying to pick their way through all the various combinations and how it all works. And then we've just been flicking through and seeing, what the launch price was of the original ETAP. That was almost 9 years ago now, to where it is now. It's about £1,000 more than where it was 9 years ago. It's about £500 more than the last generation, but you get a Hammerhead Karoo in that bundle. So the headline was about £3,000 gets you everything apart from chained cassette and crankset. But you get a Hammerhead Karoo with it, which is for about £500 more than the current advertised price of that sort of group set.
The cassettes were about £50 more?
Yeah, the cassette's about 50 quid more. The power meter's about the same price, to be fair.
So if you think of 5 years and year on year, I mean, it's not a huge increase.
It's expensive. SRAM Red has always been expensive, and it's definitely more expensive than Dura-Ace, but then Dura-Ace is actually more comparable to the Force, really, in terms of weight and price, performance, etc. So this has always been that tier above, competes more with Campagnolo Super Record. So on the whole, as a generation-defining group set, another group that is going to set the bar, it's going to be out there another 5 years, and in those 5 years we're going to see the next iteration of Dura-Ace, the next iteration of Super Record, and all those Chinese clones. Has this defined the next generation?
I think it's well on the way, and it was good to see somebody like Robbie McEwen. He kept pretty glowing with report from his experience of he's actually ridden the bike, and he was pretty upbeat about it. I couldn't believe, though, in the presentation somebody was harking back to rim brakes and
there's always one.
and smaller cassettes and da-da-da-da.
Robbie McEwen quickly closed that down.
Killed that, said no.
I wish we could have filmed that. That was absolute comedy gold. Yeah.
That was top nice, Robbie, for putting that one to bed quickly.
Yeah. As for generation defining group set, get down in the comments and let us know what you think.